Hey, Linda. Hope you're doing good this morning. I hope everybody's having a nice day today. So this is, I already did part 1 of Justin Furl's call with Jose Roman and Roman. I always say Roman and it's Roman. But his original call that he had with Jose, it's on his channel, on Justin Furl's channel. Obviously, I want everybody to listen to that before they listen to this. But if you haven't, you aren't. I mean, this will still make sense, but you're just missing a lot of the things, all the commentary that Justin added in. All right, so this is a very sad and unfortunate case, and trigger warning, it does involve child abuse, and it's just pretty graphic. Pretty much this whole live or anything on my channel, I would not recommend listening to if you're not in a good mental state. So I just want to throw that out there for this whole stream. So this is Katie Koch and her boyfriend, Joel Manke. They were charged with felonies in the child neglect case with their 2 children. It's actually her children, and that's her boyfriend right there. But still, I mean, yeah, the 2 children that he should have been partly responsible for, since they were all in the same home. They moved in with this guy, so yeah. This is from CNN. I pulled this part from CNN right here. It says, a Milwaukee mother and her boyfriend were charged with chronic neglect of a child and false imprisonment after authorities found them allegedly holding 2 children in their home against their will. Katie Koch, 34, and Joel Manke, 38, both face 4 felony charges in the case. Koch is also charged with 2 misdemeanors, for which her public defender entered a not guilty plea on her behalf in court, according to online court records. Manke and Koch did not enter pleas for their felony charges, the records show. The alleged victims are Koch's sons, ages 9 and 7. All right, and then this is from the Daily Mail online. It says, Milwaukee House of Horrors. Mother faked happy family life with her 2 boys aged 7 and 9 on social media. So this just goes to show, this is yet another example of how social media, you can't judge anybody's life or what they really have going on by their social media, because they only put on there what they want you to see. Katie Koch, 34, and her boyfriend, Joel Manke, 38, have been charged with felony counts of child neglect and imprisonment after her 2 sons escaped on July 13th of this year. The boys, 7 and 9, smashed a window and fled, naked and disheveled. Prosecutors said their house was out of a horror movie. Koch and her sons have lived at the house for 4 years, but social media posts showed the 4 on a happy road trip hugging their grandmother and playing, which obviously was not accurate. Now, this is by Harriet Alexander for dailymail.com. It was published on July 19th. A Milwaukee mother charged with child neglect and imprisonment after her two sons escaped from their horror movie home shared glossy photos of her family online, while in reality, the boys were living in squalor. Katie Koch, 34, and Joel Manke, 38, her boyfriend, were both arrested after the two boys, 7 and 9, smashed a window on their home on July 13th and escaped naked and bedraggled. Can you imagine being 7 or 9 years old and having to break a window in your own home to escape? One witness said the little boys acted like cavemen who had never seen the sun as they roamed the street. Yet Koch used her Instagram account to paint a very different picture, showing a happy family where the boys spent time with their grandmother, played in the snow, enjoyed baking and decorating for Christmas, and went on fun road trips. And if you want a more in-depth look at that, go over to Alex Erickson's channel, because she did a live on this and she actually went through all this girl's social media, and it's ridiculous. You should definitely check it out, for real. So this is Joel Manke and Katie Koch, and that's totally different than what she looks like in her mugshot. She doesn't look anything like that. Terrible. Look at that. Yep. That's the same person. I didn't believe it at first either. Crazy, huh? Manke told investigators he had lived in the house since 2007, while Koch said she moved in with her children around 4 years ago. So she moved in like 2019. He'd already lived there for like 12 years. He first appeared on her social media in October of 2019 at approximately the same time she and her children moved in with him. For Halloween that year, the family dressed up, Manke and Koch in onesies, and one of the children in a Paw Patrol outfit, with a relative dressed as a ladybug. In November of 2019, Koch showed off her son Chase's baking skills, posting images of a seemingly delighted child with a tray of brightly colored cupcakes. I didn't actually mean to say his name. I was going to skip over that, but that was an accident. Over the holidays in 2019, one son was depicted decorating the house with Christmas garlands and another in a Happy New Year outfit. The wholesome family images continued throughout 2020. The boys were shown playing in the snow, and Koch praised Manke as a wonderful stepfather, which he obviously wasn't. Yeah, and it looks like he's wearing a diaper or a pull-up, and look at his hair. I mean, really, like, closely look at that. That's terrible. This is on the dailymail.com, and they have a gallery of photos if you want to go there and look at them. This is them playing in the snow, which was probably an extremely rare occasion in 2020. And this is some of the few photos that they have. And that's the boys when they were a little bit younger, it looks like. In June of 2020, the boys were pictured rushing to hug their grandmother, throwing themselves into her arms. 4 months later, the family celebrated Dominic's 5th birthday with balloons and fun costumes. Her last photos with the children were posted in January of 2021, celebrating Manke's 36th birthday. Just wait until you hear what they've done to these children. I know you don't, if you haven't heard about this yet, you don't understand yet, you just know that they were abused and neglected, but wait until you hear. Hippo Birdie to you, my love, I am so blessed to know you, all of you, for who you really truly are, she wrote, accompanied by photos of Manke with the boys and her. You're an amazing man, best friend, daddy to our boys and all of our fur babies, and every single other role that you fulfill. May 36 be the best year yet. Here is to many, 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 many more years, Odin. The last photo she posted of herself was a month later. Her final post was in January this year and featured a series of goth memes. Weird. Investigators said the boys appeared to have been living in squalor for years, as they were not toilet trained and had not had a haircut or seen a doctor in 4 years. Koch homeschooled her sons. Quote unquote, homeschooled. She said she gave them educational things to watch on their and do on their tablets and bought them like Hooked on Phonics or something. During a police interview, Manke said he knew the living conditions were not good for the children, but he had to pick his battles with Koch to avoid arguments. Koch was filmed looking upset in a subsequent court hearing as a prosecutor outlined the abuse and neglect she is accused of inflicting on her children. Police who responded to a 911 call from nearby residents in the Lakeside, East Wisconsin city said the house was so crammed with belongings that the floor was not visible, describing it as a terrible hoarding situation. Neighbors first spotted her children, whose hair was matted by feces, peering through a shattered window on July 13th. I'm assuming of this year. Look at that. Yeah. She's as ugly on the outside as she is on the inside. Seriously. And most people are. On Monday, Koch appeared at Milwaukee County Intake Court, where the assistant district attorney described the living conditions as like something out of a horror movie. That's the home. This is pictured the House of Horrors, where the boys 7 and 9 escaped naked, covered in blood, with hair matted by feces after breaking free via a window that they shattered last week. They said the boys climbed through the window onto an air conditioning unit before jumping into the yard and walking down the street stark naked. A resident on the street, Christine Eater, said the children looked like they had never been outside. They were just walking different, she said. Their hair looked like it had never been brushed, never been cut. They didn't know the outside existed. So sad. Eater said the detached house is normally quiet and she had not seen anyone go in and out before, let alone her children. She was taken aback by the scene unfolding outside the normally unremarkable home, and she kept watch over the boys while her husband called 911. On Monday, Koch appeared at Milwaukee County Intake Court, where the assistant DA described the living conditions as like a horror movie. Mallory Davis said the boys had been imprisoned in their rooms where the windows were boarded up and the doors locked from the outside. The conditions were so bad that the children's heads had to be shaved because their hair was matted with feces. These children have been horribly damaged from their mother's actions. Trigger warning, again, on all of this. They are completely uneducated. They are not potty trained, even at their ages. They are essentially at this point unable to function in society. Koch, whose hair was also badly matted in her police mugshots, also admitted that the home is not habitable, and she said her boys deserved better, according to WDJT. At least she admits it. Doesn't make me like her anymore. That must be the neighbor. Yep. She said the children looked like they had never been outside. They were just walking different, and their hair looked like it had never been brushed. And that's the Milwaukee County Assistant District Attorney, Mallory Davis. She said these children have been horribly damaged from their mother's actions. Clearly. Koch has been set Koch has been set at a $30,000 cash bail, which officials have said she is not able to pay. Good. Manke's cash bail was set at $6,500, and it is unclear if he has paid it. And I've since read that he has, and now he's out because of that bond. Makes me sick, honestly. If convicted of all the charges, they each face prison terms of up to 43 years and fines of up to $120,000. Koch could be sentenced to an additional $20,000 in fines and 18 months in prison for the two misdemeanor counts. Their preliminary hearings are set for July 26th. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson said he hopes those responsible for the terrible treatment of the children, see justice. I'm glad that those children were able to escape. That's a terrible, unfortunate situation, he said. No kid should have to endure that sort of experience, especially not with relatives of theirs, in any home, in any community in Milwaukee or Wisconsin or the United States. I hope those people who are responsible, their parents, see some justice on this. Yes, I would sure hope so. And that's the end of that article on the Daily Mail. And I never know quite how to just switch over into another topic because it's so terrible to just leave, abruptly stop talking about something like that. But I do need, for time's sake, to switch over to Summer's case now. So this is part 2 of the phone call between Jose Roman and Justin Farrell. Credit goes to Justin on this, obviously, and if you have not listened to part 1, this will still make sense. You don't have to hear part 1 to understand part 2, but you did miss a lot if you have not heard it. You missed a lot also if you haven't listened to Justin's original call on his channel because he has a lot to say that I did not add in here. Jose brought up a lot of different things and made a lot of very big accusations, as most of you know, and a lot of you will say are not true because how could he have seen all he says he did in that short amount of time? But some of you believe everything he says. I personally do not, but I think there is truth to what he is saying because a lot of it's probably things he heard from the Wells family about Don, from the children, from Candace and Grandma, probably heard a lot from Allie and Hunter and her kids and her family too, because they all lived there at one point too. Jose exaggerates a lot. I think he says he saw things with his own eyes they was just things that he heard, but that doesn't make everything he says a lie necessarily. Maybe he's just lying about how he experienced it. Maybe he experienced it secondhand by hearing it from somebody rather than firsthand, like he says. I wish he would have just been honest if that was the case, but here we are. Justin Farrell has both the first and second part of his original call with Jose Roman, and Amanda as well was on the call on his channel. I thought Justin had a lot of great commentary on these, and he was very helpful during the parts where he was telling us what Jose was saying because it was hard to hear in places. The very end of part 1, Jose is talking about how he would hear the boys talking about things that go on in their home with their father, and he said some of the things he would hear would make his ears perk up. So I wonder if Candace just sat there and played scared while Jose allegedly fought with Don all the time, or what was Candace doing during this? Was she defending Don, her children, herself, or just sitting there? I wish I could ask Candace some of these things. Jose says he called Don out, and he says he stood up to Don for the kids and for Candace and Grandma, and I want to believe him. I don't know if I do. I kind of went back and forth for a while on it, but I just can't fathom why somebody would make up these things. If it really was that bad, she could have and should have left with the kids, Candace. And Grandma should have had Candace's back on that. and made sure they all got out of there. And she should have made her do it, honestly. I mean, I know Candace is a full-grown adult. She can do what she wants, but grandma is still her mom. And if she was living there and the abuse was really that bad, she should have taken the kids and just left, in my opinion. Jose says as he stayed there longer, the boys started to confide in him. They probably didn't feel like they could confide in Don if he really was as bad as Jose says. But I don't know. I can't speak on that. And if he was as bad as we've seen him be on YouTube at home before Summer was missing when all of his kids were there, that's scary. They probably didn't feel like they could talk to him, which was really sad. Being around Don was probably like walking on eggshells every night after he got a fifth of whiskey down and whatever else he was doing. Summer's brothers, I'm praying, are with a family that is going to see that they succeed in life and are happy, loved, and cherished as a child should be. Clean and cozy with full bellies and smiles on their faces. That's what I hope and pray for. If only Summer could have that very same thing. If only someone could just do the right thing and tell us where Summer is or how to find her. Jose said he would get a sinking feeling. He said that was when he started to assert himself and be like, no, things are going to change, as long as he was renting a room there. So I wonder how much Jose was paying Candace to stay there for rent, just out of curiosity. I wouldn't be paying that much for that. No way. I would not pay anything for that. You couldn't pay me to stay there. He must have just paid Candace like one time for the whole month that he was there. I don't know. I didn't think Jose had any money when he went down there though, but that could have just been an assumption of mine. But he did say he got a job while he was living down there, so maybe that's how he paid Candace. And where did Don and Candace sleep, by the way, if Jose's room that he rented, supposedly, was the other basement room adjacent to where Don and Candace said that they slept? Because I was confused about that, because Jose said he had the room adjacent to Summer's room, right? In the basement. Did I say Don and Candace? I meant Summer. And that Summer would always come through his room because her room was adjacent to his down in the basement. But where did Don and Candace sleep then? Was there 3 rooms down there? Because for some reason I'm just picturing the 2. Don and Candace must have slept upstairs then, or in Summer's bed with her, because Don says they slept in the same bed every night all the time for 5 years. So did they all share that room in the basement? I'm just curious. Jose says Don would hang a blanket over the basement window when they wanted to have sexual adventures with other women, and they would do it down there. So did they do that in Jose's bed or Summer's bed? I would not rent that room. I wouldn't, no. I certainly hope Don and Candace could say with confidence that nothing like that ever went on around the children or in their beds. Even though I feel like they didn't even have their own beds. The beds were just everybody's beds. It makes me feel so uncomfortable to even say that or bring it up. But I'm imagining how Summer must have felt. How did that make her feel to have to live like that? And she didn't even know there was anything wrong with it. She didn't have any boundaries. She wasn't taught that at all. How uncomfortable was Summer in that home with all the things that potentially went on there, the condition of the home and the property itself? Summer never had any privacy and probably wasn't taught or shown any boundaries. And I have my reasons for thinking that. I want Summer rescued so badly and given to a loving family where she can truly grow and be her best self and be shown a healthy and peaceful way to live. I just want her found, period. It drives me nuts, but it doesn't matter how I feel. It matters how Summer feels and how she felt. But it seems like all Don and Candace care about is how they feel. Jose said Don was a big guy, over 6 feet tall. But he didn't scare him at all. He didn't care how big Don was. He could have been a giant, but when it comes to children, Jose says he will fight to his last breath. So Jose actually makes himself sound like a very good man, and I hope he was. I hope he genuinely was. I want to believe that he was for the most part. He got his point across about Don being abusive towards his family in so many ways. He made his point about Candace. He doesn't think she would ever hurt Summer, and that Don would be the guilty one, not Candace. I think that was his whole point. I think he was exaggerating, but I think he was trying to get a point across. He definitely exaggerates, okay? But that's actually where part 1 ends. But before I go too off on a tangent, um yes, he does exaggerate sometimes, and it is hard to believe a lot of the things that he says. I'm not gonna lie, okay? But that's where part 1 ends, actually, and then I just didn't get quite through the last couple minutes before, so I just wanted to go back over that. Amanda says, "Well, thank you for taking care of the kids." Jose says, "Absolutely, absolutely." I've noticed that is one of Jose's favorite words. Absolutely. He says it a lot. He says Candace needed a lot of help mentally. I agree wholeheartedly with that. In my opinion, it shows. Candace comes off to me as very codependent to the point where she doesn't actually make any decisions based on what she truly wants. She bases everything off of Don because she thinks she needs him to survive, in my opinion. When she is separated from Don long enough, she realizes she doesn't need him to be happy and she wants better for herself. But then he always shows back up. And just as quickly as she was about to up and leave him for good for Ernie or Benny or whoever, she's right back with Don like nothing ever happened. Even after hearing all of the things that were said about Don showering with Summer and Candace being so shook over all of that, but did she ever even address it? She just went right back with Don. Like, it seemed as though nobody ever questioned that. And it seemed as though nothing ever happened. Like, hello, did you just forget what you were just told by Ernie about Don? And you were so sick over it, but now you're just right back with him like nothing happened? And nobody's going to talk about that? Jose goes on to say, just talking with them and seeing those things, I'm telling you, that man could hurt you. I think that's basically what he says right there. He's really hard to understand. Jose is actually very hard to understand throughout the entire call, but especially in this part 2 segment. Not Justin's fault. It happens. He couldn't control how Jose sounded and Jose's background noise and muffled voice. It is what it is. Amanda asks if Grandma was afraid of Don, and Jose quickly said yes, she was. And I personally believe she probably was because Candace wrote in the order of protection that she was afraid that Don was going to hurt her grandma because she lived on the property. So Grandma, I don't know, maybe Grandma was afraid that Don was going to hurt her too, and maybe she voiced that to Candace. I don't know. But at the same time, Grandma wasn't too afraid, or she would have taken the grandkids away from Don, right? Or she just let the abuse happen and did nothing, just like Candace, allegedly. If there really was abuse going on, like Jose and many others says there was. Summer did have a lot of bruises. I mean, we've all seen them. She had straight up big old black eyes in some pictures that were from different times. And that's not normal. It's normal for kids to get bruises on their legs and stuff. Little bruises here and there all the time. You know, here and there on their leg or on their arm or their elbow or whatever. But on your eye. And I get you have older brothers. I grew up 6 kids in my family. I get it. There's only 2 girls. The rest are boys. They're rough, yes. But black eyes are not a normal, typical thing for a little 3, 4, 5-year-old girl. Summer had a lot of bruises, okay? And I know kids get them, but They slipped into a few pictures. Imagine the ones she probably had that Candace didn't take pictures of. I do wonder. Grandma was probably the one that called the cops on Don, I bet. Probably more than once. It wouldn't surprise me if Grandma was the one that called 911 on June 15th, 2021, and not Candace. And that's why Candace said she had to use Grandma's phone, because she knew people would wonder why the call was made off Grandma's phone. Even though she knew, like, she should know any phone could call 911. Jose says about Grandma, she says she wasn't scared of Don, but you can tell when someone's scared. Jose says he learned growing up that when people are scared, they avoid eye contact, and he knows the looks people give when they're scared, and he recognized that in Grandma and everybody else around Don. He could see the fear in the faces of Candace, Grandma, and the children, including Summer, the fear of Don, the son-in-law, husband, brother, dad of the family, the one that everybody was afraid of. He says Don was completely abusive, like completely. So when I hear that, it scares me. It actually gets me shook to my core to hear Jose say these things, because I fear probably the same thing that all of you fear, that he's being brutally honest and there's a chance that it could be true. And he has seen several variations of abuse done upon all of Don's family, including his children, and whether that was only one time or just things he heard the boys talking about and heard from Candace and Grandma, that's still just as bad. That's totally unacceptable. There's no one in this world that can tell me that Don is a good father if this is even remotely true. But that's the problem. How can we ever know if anything Jose is saying is actually true? Usually there's a bit of truth in every tale told, especially in a situation like this where there's just so much being said. I would love to hear what Candace has to say about this. I think there was abuse. I think Jose made it very clear that he thinks Don was the whole entire problem, and he thinks Don is responsible for Summer being missing from the way he talks. He thinks Don is guilty. Justin says one night, one of our friends was interviewing Don and Candace, and Candace was yelling at Don, and on the live, Don hit Candace. Well, we didn't actually see Don hit Candace, but it did sound like it, and Candace reacted like he hit her, and she said that he hit her, and Don also reacted as he would, in my opinion, if he did hit her, if that makes sense. Yeah, we all know what that was. So, but I believe it that Don hit Candace. I thought he did, in my opinion. That probably was something that happened regularly. That's sad no matter how you feel about Candace. There's really no excuse for that behavior, especially in front of your children, your own children, any children at all. But your own, like, that doesn't get to your heart. Jose says, "You see, I told you, that's how he is." That's exactly how he is. What you saw there, what you probably saw, that's the real Don. That's no facade. You got the raw deal, what that man is all about when you saw that. I think Jose's right about that, actually. He says because Candace finally started to stand up for herself and speak up against the abuse, and that was his response. He wanted to assert his authority over Candace, according to Jose. And he's probably right about that too. Jose says he learned there's always a bigger alpha than you in this world. He says he grew up in New York City, really rough streets. You might be a badass, but there's always someone out there that's badder than me. That's what he says he learned from the streets of New York. Jose comes across as a humble man for the most part, in my opinion. When he says things like this, it shows me how much different he really was than Don. I think Jose was a lot softer than he acts like he was. I think it was just in his nature because he doesn't seem like an aggressive person. He seems more gentle and down to earth and a lot more relaxed than Don. A lot more compassionate and understanding and tolerant, in my opinion. And he's even kind of a little bit feminine, in my opinion. And I definitely don't mean that in a bad way because, duh, I'm a female. So obviously, I mean that as a compliment. Jose says when he winded up being in their house, Don winded up noticing right away. Any man should take notice if there has been another man moved into their home with their wife and children while they were away out of state working or doing whatever Don was doing in Utah. This clearly was not an average everyday family dynamic that they had going on at the Wells home. It was more of like a flop house. And it seems as though whatever Don and Candace's addictions were at the time were what ruled the roost. Unfortunate that I feel this way. I know. I don't like that I feel this way. Jose says of Don, he thought he was the big dog for a long time. But Jose says once he came there, Don noticed there was a man there that was going to defend his kids, and Don did not like that. Now, in my opinion, Don probably didn't like that because he didn't want to have to refrain from doing whatever disgusting things Don does involving drugs or horrors or anything else in his own house, or have to watch himself with how he was behaving, knowing himself that he's violent and a belligerent drunk. But it sounds like he didn't hold back that much just because Jose was there, if we believe Jose. Justin asks if Jose knows how long Don would take these trips to Mexico, and Jose says from the stories he has heard, Don goes down to Mexico like 5 times a year. Now, I wonder where Jose heard that from. There's been an awful lot of mention of Mexico. In Summer's case, it could just be a complete distraction. But who knows? I would certainly hope it's been looked into because I would hope everything's been looked into at this point. So, Don, if it's true that you venture to Mexico like 5 times a year, is that every year? And what's the reason? Do you go alone? Yeah, I want to know about that. Don has brought up swimming across the Rio Grande and how you can get into Mexico just fine swimming across the river and they wouldn't even notice. But coming back into the States, it's tricky. Don has suggested in the past that someone could have done that with Summer, like swam her across the Rio Grande or whatever and got her into Mexico. I believe it was when he was talking to Chris McDonough in the beginning when he was having Steve Johnson on his channel. Jose mentions Don's stepsister. I think it was Sonia talking about how Don went to Mexico and one of the sisters, Sonia, yeah, that takes up for Don. The one that Don says Summer looks just like her. She had to go down and get Don in Mexico. Jose says his sister, he believes it was, went to Mexico to find Don and found him at a drunken whorehouse in Mexico, and she dragged him all the way back to Tennessee to his wife and kids. How would she know where in Mexico to find Don? Does he have some kind of hideaway where he normally goes and Sonia knows about it? Or is she just new to look in that neighborhood or what? Somebody make that make sense. How would she track Don down in another country when she lives in a whole nother state from where he lives in Tennessee and he went all the way to Mexico? How's she going to track him down? I doubt he was answering his phone if he knew anybody was trying to come there and find him and drag him back home. And how did Don get down there in the first place? If Sonia brought him home, where did the vehicle go that Don drove down there in? Or did he not drive? Did he ride down there with somebody? So I thought he said he took his white truck to Mexico one time. Did he not say that? But why was he there? Why would he be going to Mexico? I have so many questions. Jose says they don't talk about it because, well, family secrets, you know. They're going to protect one of their own. Now, I don't know that Don's family would all say the same. I think Don has screwed over a large portion of his own family, probably. He even says Tucker, who I believe are all 7 of his alibis, was like family, and even they disowned him. So I guess Don doesn't really have many people in his corner, after all. Who would have thunk? I can't imagine why that would be. Seems the only people in Don's corner is his daughter Margie, and what is she getting out of that? How is that an asset to her, or even is it? And people that are gaining off of him that he's an asset to them, like Daisy. Those are the only people he has in his corner. Jose says Don was going to the town over, and he personally seen Candace drag Don's ass out of that house, stoned, spent the whole paycheck, and he's drugged out of his mind. That's what I made out of what he said. Jose asks if Don ever told them about the time that Don had an affair with some lady while Candace was downstairs sleeping with Summer. I actually think I remember hearing about that. But someone was saying there were people having sex all over in the house right in front of everybody. But who knows if that's true? I think it might have been Allie or one of her kids or somebody from Allie's family that I heard talking about that. I don't really remember who it was. Jose said they didn't tell you about that. And Justin says no. Jose said he doesn't know the lady's name, but she lives about a half a mile down the road on the left-hand side. So, true story, he says. White house with blue shutter windows, and the driveway is a wraparound, and there's 2 big trees right in front of it, and you have to look through the trees to see the house. Candace would always drive by it and curse the woman out because she was always outside. Is this something that anybody has taken the time to try to verify just for the purposes of knowing if Jose is full of it or if he's actually telling the truth on this one? Because he sounds genuine in his memory of this, and he speaks of Summer in that same matter-of-fact, genuine tone when telling something he's remembering visually. So I want to believe him, but it would be cool to kind of like verify some of this stuff to try to, even though Justin said he tried to verify some of it and he could not. I feel in my heart Jose was being honest to an extent, but I want to believe him at the same time because it's not fair the kids had to go through any of that, you know? And if Jose was actually the only one there trying to protect them and be nice to them, it's like, I appreciate him for that, but I do feel like he could have done more. And I know he went to file the paperwork with Candace and the kids, supposedly, from what he says. And maybe he thought that was doing what he needed to do and that would take care of it. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. And it sucks. Jose says she was married, the woman Don cheated on Candace with. I'm sure that didn't even cross Don's mind. It clearly didn't bother him that he was married. But it sure bothered him that Jose was in the house cooking a meal for his family when he got home from Utah because he was married. Funny how it don't work both ways. Justin says he has a photo of a lady and he doesn't remember who it was, but Candace put it on her Facebook and she wrote some derogatory word. Well, the lady was supposedly Crystal. Now, I know Crystal is a real person. I don't know anything about her. I'm not saying anything he is saying about her is true. I'm just repeating things that Jose claims he thought to be true. Jose says, especially after the things he has seen with his own eyes, yeah, she's telling the truth. Jose says for him to have seen and experienced that in such a short amount of time, he can't imagine the years of abuse they have all been through. It's truly sad. That's what I've been thinking. That's so terrible for Summer and her brothers. They don't deserve those emotionally, mentally, and physically painful experiences in their young lives. Jose says Don would hurt the dogs too if they didn't listen. Poor dogs. That's so gross, Don. Why would you hurt an animal? Jose says, let me tell you, one time, Hunter got a kitten for Summer, because Summer wanted a kitten. And Hunter went out of his way. He mowed lawns and did side jobs for this little white and gray kitten. Why didn't he just get on Facebook? People are giving away kittens all day. Well, anyways, Don came home and got so upset that the cat was in the house. This was a kitten, mind you, and they had like 4 or 5 dogs there, and Don threw the kitten in front of all the dogs in the lawn, and the dogs tore the kitten apart and killed it. Summer screamed and cried, and Don said that's what happens because she shouldn't have let the kitten in the house, and she should have listened. This is one that makes my stomach turn because to do that to an innocent little kitten and your innocent 4-year-old daughter at the same time, right in front of everybody without a second thought, that just shows how stripped Don is of any empathy whatsoever and speaks to how Don saw Summer in his eyes, which was not as an innocent child. That was only a toddler just the summer prior. Summer was a baby practically at the time Jose was there. Don didn't see Summer as a precious, innocent little girl. Don saw Summer as his property, in my opinion, and he didn't respect the fact that she was just a young child. That's my opinion. And again, we don't know that any of this is even true. Jose said he just looked at Don with disgust, as I would have. He says Don needed locked up in a prison cell and throw away the key. He's probably right, honestly. Jose says about the kitten being killed by Don when he threw it to the dogs that Hunter didn't even know. So Jose had to tell him. He said Don killed the kitten, threw it to the dogs, and they ripped it to shreds. I freaking hate that story so much. Jose says Hunter hung out there a lot. I was just watching one of Nature Lovers' videos. I think it was Enigma number 19. Yeah. There's the clip of Jenna saying she was told by Candace that one of the reasons the boys were removed was because they heard that Candace and Hunter was messing around, and Candace trusted Jenna with that information because there was a gag order at that point. I hope Hunter and Candace were not close in that way, in a romantic way at all. That's terrible for Hunter if that's the case. And shame on you, Candace, if that's true, because that is truly sick. And there have been some Facebook posts that have really made me wonder. Jose also says he isn't sure if Don was jealous of Hunter when asked. But when Don saw Jose in the house when he got home from Utah, he sure was jealous then. No offense to Amanda, but how weird of a question to be asked. I see why she asked if Don was jealous of Hunter. But can you imagine being on the receiving end of that question? Like, how low have you gone in your life that you are living around people that we're not even sure if they were pedophiles or not? No offense, Jose, either, but my God. We're asking ourselves these kinds of questions about Don and Candace because they're not good people. They're definitely not role models for children. Don says he was a father figure to Hunter because Hunter didn't have a father, which he does. He just isn't down there in Tennessee. He's in New York. Don shouldn't be jealous of a teen boy. He should have seen Candace as a mother figure, but instead he saw her like as a girlfriend figure, it seems like. And I'm sorry, but I feel like Allie knew that and she didn't care, which is really messed up. Jose calls Don out for driving drunk all the way back from Utah with his oldest son in the car. I'm so glad because that's always bothered me so much that Don was practically bragging about flying cross country in his truck drunk to get home from Utah, but never mind the fact that he had one of his young children in the vehicle with him. That's not cool. Even if he was by himself, he could have killed someone, including himself and his son. And if his son wasn't with him, he still could have killed himself or somebody else's kid. So again, Jose says there was actually a real man in the house now, doing what a real man was supposed to do, cleaning the house and helping the children with homework, and opening his wife's eyes and his children's eyes to what a real man should be doing. So Don had to whip it across the country as fast as he could because he didn't like that. It was a threat to him, according to Jose. I think if Jose knew about the abuse being so bad, he should have just loaded Candace up when Don was at work, loaded up the kids, and drove far away. He knows how to be off grid so well and seemed to know how to take care of things like a real man, judging by how he talks. So I wish he could have made that happen. And maybe Summer would still be here. Who knows? There are many things that could have been done differently by many people, and Summer would probably still be here. I wouldn't blame Jose for anything. Like I've said, I think he pretty much thought everything was reported because Candace going up and filing that paperwork and the order of protection for her and her children. But yeah, of course, he could have done more. Everybody in Summer's life could have done more. They still can. Jose says, "You want to put that man in front of me? Look how he reacts when he sees my face." Jose says Don would lunge at him. Jose also says he wouldn't mind knocking Don's ass out. Now, this part I do wonder about because, like I said many times, it doesn't seem like Jose would have been there long enough with Don there to have witnessed some of these things he is claiming to have witnessed as much as he claims he did. He obviously exaggerates sometimes, and I think this may be one of those times. I could be wrong, but Don, has Jose knocked you out 3 times? Because Jose says he has physically knocked Don out 3 times. He has knocked Don out in front of his kids and in front of his wife. And there was one time where Grandma come out and was trying to stop Jose, and he said he literally picked Grandma up from under her arms and moved her over out of the way. He says Don swung at him and he broke a pool stick over Don's head after banging his face around on some things. I know I gotta say, I don't like that this happened in front of the children, if it really did. That's not cool at all. Who was there to take the kids away from that? Like Jose claims he had to do when Don was abusing Candace. Was all 3 times in front of the kids? Because that's really disheartening, to be honest. I can't lie about that. No hate. It's just sad all around. Nobody protected Summer the way that she needed to be protected. That's just the truth, and it's really sad. Jose says Grandma says she never met a man that strong who was so short. Jose says men like that, like Don, get beat up in prison all the time. You don't gain respect like that. If you're a woman beater or a child beater, you get no respect. They come after you. That's why they get into protective custody, because they know. I mean, he's probably right. I've never been to prison, but I could imagine that's pretty accurate. There's not many people that tolerate that behavior outside in the free world. Justin points out that he thinks Don is mainly aggressive towards women and not men. Don can be very aggressive towards men too, though, because I've heard him go off on Josh and Doug and Chris and Dudley and several others. Jose says he knows that for a fact about Don not getting respect in prison if you're a woman beater or a child abuser. Jose says Candace had one friend come visit. He says he forgot her name. It might have been Rose Meyer, maybe. Jose says they used to go every year to an event in another state for Rosemary Bly, who has been missing since August 21st of 2009 from St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. And if you are not familiar with Rosemary Bly's case, please look it up. She's Summer's aunt, and she deserves to be found. She has children. She was only 21 years old, I believe. Jose doesn't name Rose Meyer by name, but I do believe that's who he must be talking about with Candace's friend that came down, and which is actually Grandma's friend. I didn't know Rose Meyer was around Ben Hill when Summer was there. That's interesting. I guess I don't really know much about Rose Meyer. I've only heard things people have said. So her and Candace were friends? Because I thought her and Grandma were the ones that were friends. Is that bothering anybody else? I really am wondering about this. Rose Meyer possibly being in Beech Creek 8 months prior to Summer's disappearance while Summer was there. She would have been 4 years old. She was practically a baby. Jose says he left after he got there to South Carolina. 2 weeks later, that's when his boss picked him up from the bus terminal, and he says he went to New Jersey and picked up another person. And he says, we went to John F. Kennedy Airport to go to Alaska then. That's what Jose was explaining to FBI, he says. He says he was explaining it to Justin like he explained it to the FBI. Jose says he has pay stubs to prove where he was. Jose says he just dropped a bomb on the FBI because they didn't know half the things that he knew. He said so they were on the phone sending people all over. He was giving them addresses, describing what places looked like. He gave them all the information he knew. Well, he said he didn't give them physical addresses because he probably didn't know them. He just gave them directions and described what the houses looked like. He says he told them about the drug house that he knew about, what it looked like, and everything. Jose said it's not the White House with the blue shutters that he described. That was the woman Don had an affair with. So who owned the drug house? Was that the Joshua place? Justin asks what was the house that was behind Don and Candace's house, and Jose said those were the druggies that lived there. 110 seems to fit that same description, in my opinion. Justin asked if Don and Candace had an exchange with them. Jose said, not that I know of, but Don had words with the man Joshua, like, keep away from my kids, physical altercation words. Don't be bringing them drugs around my kids. He said he never would have thought he was on drugs until he heard Don say that, and then Don disappeared for 2 weeks when he came back from Utah. I was thrown off by that statement at the end because he just totally changes the subject there. He said he thought maybe Don was drunk, but he said he already knows what that was like when Don's drunk. That wasn't it. He wasn't drunk because he's seen people high on drugs, and Don looked high on drugs. Jose said absolutely, hit the nail right on the head. He said Don was a drug user, and Don made a big show in front of him, but he was just a hypocrite. Justin says Don talks about religion a lot and says he goes to church and celebrates the Sabbath, and Jose is like, no, he doesn't. If he goes to church and keeps the Sabbath, I'm a virgin, Jose said. He personally has a Bible, and that's it. He said he reads his Bible every single day. Jose said he don't go to church because he stole cigarettes, and God does not like hypocrites. Jose said he would never go and say he's a man of full faith when he knows he's not. So at least he owns it. Jose says God doesn't want people to lie, just be honest and truthful. He says now Don is in jail and he's starting to realize all of the evil from over the years. Now, me personally, I don't think so. I think Don believes all his bad behaviors are justified. And I don't think he feels bad about anything he's done to anybody. Look how he talks to his stepsisters. Look how he talks about Summer. Jose said it would be hard if he was just straightening out his life. But it's too late. It had to take something this drastic to make him wake up. I didn't really understand that part, but Jose says when it was time for him to go, Candace begged for him to stay. If it was really like that, Jose should have tried to help Candace find a way to come with him and take her and the kids somewhere off the grid where they can be safe for a minute until they can get everybody into a shelter or something and get on their feet. That's a real life situation that happens every day, all the time. Jose could have made that happen, but He thought everything was going to be taken care of with that order of protection, probably. But Candace screwed that up because she just dropped it. But what good does it do to sit here and say, what if this, what if that, especially in regards to someone that's passed on that can't even speak on anything anymore? Candace wanted to be with him, he says, but not be with him, like not sexually, he means. Jose said Don would be screaming and Jose would pop his head in and Don would just shut up. I cannot picture that. I cannot picture Don being the type of person to let anybody shut him up. The judge can't even get Don to shut up. Nobody on a panel can ever bring him down from an N word or an F word high. He's unstoppable, it seems, in my opinion. Another example of exaggerations, probably. Justin says Jose did have a job and he confirmed it. Jose worked at a cat scratch factory, which he never knew existed, but it's true. So, the part that makes me laugh, and maybe I'm alone on this, but I actually kept laughing for a while every time I thought about Justin saying Jose worked at a cat scratch factory. Because I just imagine Jose sitting there scratching a bunch of cats as they come down conveyor belts, and he just scratches them all as they go by. And there's other people all around scratching cats as they go by. I thought that was funny. But he means like a cat scratch factory, as in cat toys, like the cat scratcher thingies that cats claw up. Anyways, Justin does say he called there and he verified it, and they showed him his bank stubs and verified this information. Jose says he worked for a company that was making cat scratching posts. Jose says it was just a nice little job until he returned to Alaska. He says they hired him knowing he was going to work at another job, and they knew it was temporary. He said Grandma would take him and he would work from 6 to 2:30. At least he had a job and didn't just use the wells for a place to stay while he just did nothing. Jose said when he would shower, he would literally kick everybody out of the house. Jose said even though it was their house, he would be like, get the hell out. He said number one, Candace is a married woman, Grandma is a grandma, and there's the kids. He said he would be in and out in 20 minutes and be done. This was because there was no walls or doors or partitions or even a blanket hanging, nothing around the shower and toilet. Wasn't even a bathroom. Can't even call it that because it wasn't a room. It was just a toilet and a shower out in the open. There was no privacy and probably no boundaries. Jose said Summer would say she wanted to go outside when she didn't have a shirt on. Jose says she would tell Don and Don would be like, okay, go. And Jose said he would be like, what the hell is she doing? You're not going to go out there with her? He says he'd be like, oh, hell no. Because he would go out there and Summer would be out there with her princess PJs on with no shoes and no shirt. And that's how Don would let her go outside. And Jose would throw a fit over it. Jose is saying something about finding Summer on Sherfy's property. I think he's hard to understand verbatim, but he says one time Sherfy got her from there and one time Don got her from there. Maybe from in the road by Sherfy's property? Don punished Summer for that, according to Jose. I hope that's not true, because it's pretty bad what he says. Sometimes I hope Jose was just making up a lot of this because he really hated Don and was taking up for Candace. I don't want all of these things Jose is saying to be true. I unfortunately do believe that he witnessed abuse and saw how Don really was and heard all about it from Don's family. And he probably wanted to make a point that he might not have actually seen all that he says he has or done all that he says he did, but he knows Don is abusive and has done some of these things. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I see it. Jose said we're not talking a little spank on the butt. We're talking he beat her. Like he literally whipped on her. He said Jose had to literally jump into it. Don was literally whipping Summer, according to Jose, for being caught down in the road by Sharfie's house. Jose said Don was wailing on her. Jose said, "That's not going to teach her anything." And he's right. All it'll do is hurt her and scare her. Is this the incident we heard Jose speak of another time when he said Summer was all the way down at the bottom of the driveway and Don went down there and got her and beat her butt all the way back up? Was that true, or Allie or someone else that's told that story? I thought it was Jose, but I bet somebody knows. Justin asks if Jose can think of any other times Don has done that. Jose said all of them. If they didn't listen, he would slap them upside the head. I hate that. Jose said one time he threw a frying pan at one of them, and he said he saw these things with his eyes personally. These were not just things that he heard. So maybe he really did see that, one of the poor children getting hit in the head with a frying pan by their own dad. Maybe when he says these are things I saw with my own eyes, when he has to say that, maybe it's because it was one thing that he really did see. I don't know. Justin talks about Don going to all these drug houses and all the trips to Mexico. Jose's like, "Yeah, I'm telling you." So what? What does he mean, "I'm telling you"? Like, that was a big thing with Don, with drugs in Mexico. That tells me Don was pretty deep into that life with drugs if he was taking trips to Mexico for drugs, if that's what it was for, and if it even happened. Jose said Don was like, "How do you expect me to feel with another male in my house?" Well, can't really blame him. Jose said that's when he found out that if he does things like he was doing, Jose would react to it, I believe is what he was trying to say. Jose says Don wouldn't last a week in Alaska. Don thought he could. He probably couldn't. Don thought Jose was sleeping with his wife. Jose says he told Don right to his face if he was sleeping with Candace, he wouldn't be in that doorway right now. As in, Jose would not have Don in the house. If he wanted Candace, he could have her. Which is kind of hard to picture, honestly, because I think if someone talked to Don like that, he probably would knock them out. Which maybe that was one of the times Jose allegedly knocked Don out. Who knows? Don has way too much of a temper and he will snap way too easily, so I just find it hard to believe that Jose talked to Don the way that he says he did. Once Don snaps, he just lets it all out, and he's got a big mouth on him. And I don't know if he can throw a punch the way he can run his mouth, but he definitely can run his mouth. Justin mentions the door that Candace broke that Don allegedly punched her in the throat for. They were really intoxicated that night when Candace said, "You just throated me in my punch." Don thought he ended the live, but you have to hit end live twice, and he probably only hit it once, and it was still live, and he didn't realize it. Yeah. How embarrassing for their kids when they grow up and realize that these videos exist, if they don't already. Jose says he was the real alpha male in that house. Again, I don't know. I would imagine Don would say the same about himself. Amanda asks what time Don usually got home from work, and Jose says anywhere between 4, and then it cuts out, and you can't hear what the latest time is that he says. Jose says, believe me, when he walked through the door, he already had a 6-pack in him. I guarantee you could smell it on his breath. Jose says Don averaged home by about 4 o'clock if he was working. Now it's around the 1 hour and 12-minute mark. 1 hour, 13-minute mark. I had to skip some stuff because I just can't hear it. I can't make out what they're saying. They're saying something about CPS, and the day before Summer came up missing, when Don was in that bathtub and looked like he lost his best friend and fired Dudley that day. Justin says he feels like they didn't want CPS to know something, or they were afraid of something. I agree with that. I think it does seem that way. Jose goes on to say he believes that because of the beatings that Candace used to take protecting her kids, he doesn't think she did anything to Summer. But as for Don, he thinks he would be the one to hurt Summer. It sounds like he's talking about some of the things Don would do to the kids, but it's too hard to make out for sure what he says. And that's around the 1 hour and 16-minute mark. Jose says something about that he guarantees you will find the dirty little things about something about Don. He hated Don. Justin asks if you could think of any sketchy person that lived on Ben Hill, who would it be? Jose says, well, I told you about that one guy. He was the only one he was really concerned about. I'm assuming he's talking about the Joshua. Jose said down there, that one family that I told you down there that did meth. Justin says he doesn't think it was Fred because it was supposed to be like really close, which Fred's isn't actually that far. It's like a 10-minute walk. That's not that far. Because Jose made it sound like it might have taken about 10 minutes to walk to that place, you know? Jose says that the boys used to help him do chores, and Candace would be surprised because they don't ever help. Candace is like, how do you get them sweeping and shit? They never did that before. Jose says one conversation he had with Candace, she asked how he convinced them and got them to be like this, and Jose says respect. If that doesn't teach you how to raise a child properly, I don't know what will. I'm assuming Jose's mother raised him to respect her, and that's where he's getting his family values talk from. Because I heard that something bad happened with his children, that he wasn't allowed to be around them and hadn't seen them for years. But then what he says next really made me wonder, was one of the children autistic? Because I remember hearing people talk about Summer possibly being autistic, but I don't know. Because Jose says a special needs child will definitely push your limits. Not many people know about autism, but he says he raised all 3 of his children. His 2 boys graduated high school and college. So is he saying one of his children were autistic? Because he was just talking about Summer, and then all of a sudden he's talking about he raised all 3 of his kids. So I don't know if he was saying one of his kids is autistic or if he was talking about Summer. Like I said, it's really muffled and it's really hard to make out, unfortunately. Jose says he didn't know what being a dad was till he had kids, of course, till he held that precious little girl. Jose says your whole life totally falls to shambles because you have this little girl and you want to live how you want to live, but you can't because you have a kid now. Jose says a boy is different than a girl. He says you don't want nobody to beat your mother or your sister, right? That's how you should be with your wife. If you don't want no one to do it to your mother, your sister, your wife, your daughter, you shouldn't do it either. That's how he felt. All right. I wish everybody felt that way. But to Don, it's obviously justified in his mind for whatever reason. Because for him to do it so much and so bad, it obviously is just in his nature, and it doesn't bother him that people bring that out in him, whether they mean to or not. Don just can't control himself, in my opinion, or put his strengths to good use. Jose says Don's father despised him. Justin mentions that Don's dad had dementia, and Jose says his father despised him and called him a junkie and a physical abuser. So when did Jose talk to Don's dad? Jose said it's going to end up being too late because Don doesn't want to change, and it did end up being too late because Summer is now missing. The rest is pretty choppy because it's hard to understand, but if you want to go over and watch it for yourself, see if you can hear what is being said once you get to the 1 hour and 30-minute mark. That's where I'm at now. Having trouble making it out, but it's just the last few minutes what I got out of it. Jose says the oldest boy in him would literally go searching for Summer, and they would find her down the driveway, on the road, behind a house down the hill where he was talking about. Apparently, Summer wasn't running from anything or anybody when she would go down there. She was just playing and being a kid. Jose said she didn't want to run away. She wasn't doing anything bad. Justin mentions theories about that Don sold her or gave her up. Maybe Candace went outside and found that an accident happened. Then they hid her because they didn't want to get in trouble, which is where a lot of people are at and have been since Don's first interview. Jose says, well, of course they're going to get in trouble, and God forbid she has a life-threatening injury and they take her to the hospital. They would get homicide charges. Jose says that's what, 15 to 20 years, and Amanda says it's a felony if it's under 8, criminally negligent homicide, Jose says. They could get life. Jose says something about regret sank in his heart. He says he felt so much guilt he should have never left. Maybe what he should have done was take Candace and the kids with him, but at the same time, how do we know he would have been capable of supporting all of them himself? Amanda says, just to clarify, Don has a red work truck. Did he drive it every day? And Jose says no. I'm trying to see what else they talk about here because I think that's pretty much it. And I want you to go over to Justin's and listen to it for yourself if you want to hear the entirety of it. Like, I don't want to just sorry, I just totally lost my spot. Jose says he doesn't think Don owned the truck. He thinks his boss let him use it. And it was better than his white truck. So, yeah. Amanda says, so the time Summer ran off and she went to that property, the man's name was Joshua, and Jose says, yeah. And then people are known drug users. Justin asks if Jose ever met Jody Sue or Andy. Jose says no, he never personally met them. Then I still want to know, how does Jose know Candace and Jody were so close? Because he says Candace and Jody were really close. I've always wondered about that. Yeah, like I said, he probably heard Allie and her kids talk. He probably heard Candace and Grandma talk and Don's kids talk. And that's probably where he got a lot of this from. And he probably did listen to a lot of YouTube, to be honest. I mean, he acts like he didn't know nothing about the case, but he probably did. He probably knew some things. He had to have, right? Because, I'm sure he was like debriefed on it by Justin or whatever before he took the call, but just the way he keeps saying Grandis, like he'd been following it, and just some of the things he said that sounded like were things that he heard off of YouTube, probably. I think he also was exaggerating a lot, like I've said, though I would like to remain as respectful as possible to him. Just in the off chance that his family were to ever listen to this, I don't want to be disrespectful. He's no longer with us anymore. It's just not necessary. I can still get my point across that I don't believe everything that was said, but I think there's a reason why he said it. I think he wanted to get a point across about Don. I think he had a vendetta on Don for a reason. I don't like that he was kind of putting essay on Summer. That's not something you should accuse anybody of unless you know for sure. And I don't like that he couldn't have just said that these were things that he heard, if that's the case, that he pretends that he witnessed it firsthand if he really didn't. But what are you going to do? Can't confront him about it. It's not going to make a difference now. I hope that he was a light in Summer's life like he says he was, like he kind of describes himself as being. And Summer was obviously a light in his life and everybody else's. And she will continue to be a light in my life forever, no matter what we ever do or do not find out about. Summer and her case, she's always going to be a light in my life. All right, well, that was it. That was pretty much it. It's my man's birthday today, so we are about to go out and get dinner with his mom and the family. So I hope everybody has a nice day. At the time that I'm recording this, I should say it's his birthday, because I'm probably recording this now and then I'm going to go live with it and play it for you guys tomorrow morning. So I hope everybody has a nice day, and thank you for being here and listening to this. I know it's been a lot of talk of Jose Roman, and honestly, I'm kind of glad that it's over at this point, because that was a lot. And who knows if any of it's even true. I want to believe him, but it is what it is. All right. Thanks for being here, you guys. Hello, Victoria, Kasha's Gems, everyone in the bushes. Who else? Where's Summer? 1-800 TBI FIND. I can't forget about you. I'm that bitch, Mama Bear. Michael Priestman, everyone else that was in here. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you all have a really nice day. Victoria Burgess, it is your birthday. Happy birthday to you, beautiful. I hope it's amazing. Hey, Selena. Thanks for being here and listening. All right, I better go before there gets to be too much background noise, because that's why I always pre-record. But I do love you guys, and thanks for being here and listening to this. It's a crazy world out there, so keep your crown on straight. Keep your head up. Hey, Nature Lover. Hey, babe. Nature Lover is going to be putting out a new video here probably today, she said. Go over and check out Nature Lover. I think Lip Lock No More is live right now. I think if you guys want to go over there. Thank you again for being here, and I hope you all have a blessed day. No summer, no peace.